Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's special selection comes at us from Joseph, an award-winning pop music writer-producer from the UK, decides to start a prog band. And this is the result. Buckle up and have fun. This sounds like it's going to be a blast. Now, I don't know how to pronounce this band. It is Frost Asterisk, which makes me want to think Froststar, which is like a cool name, but probably not what they wanted, because every time that I pronounce asterisk as star, it's always wrong. So I don't know. Y'all are going to have to let me know. I looked it up. I couldn't find a proper pronunciation of it. Might not just been looking in the right places. Regardless, we're here for the music, not for the band pronunciation. Although I do try to get it right most of the time. Let's dive into Black Light Machine. Very catchy melodic lines so far. Also, the heavy panning and the bright sounds is a big throwback to classic prog rock. And see, another really good highlight of the melodic writing in this track. I am hoping that this foundation changes pretty soon though. Yeah, it's good to know this dude is a producer too. There's a lot of interesting production tricks going on in here that I probably could just roll up as a throwback to the sonic experimentation of classic prog, but actually makes a lot of sense in modern production terms as well. Well, we do have a different foundation here, but it's a very similar concept. I love the expressiveness of both of the guitar solos so far. drummer just sitting back there on the groove. Laying down that 2 and 4 snare. Changing it though, more intensity. Yeah, some tasteful shred as a transition to a new melodic idea. The guitar sitting just behind the beat to add extra emphasis, like it's more work to play the end of this solo. Five minutes in though, this side piano keyboard thing's still going on. It's interesting that the vocalist sounds right at home in prog rock, but the production is definitely pop. The chimes here are nice. Sonically, a lot of it fits in the same realm as Big Big Train. Oh, not anymore, man. Moving more into metal territory here. Is that an electronic drum kit? Or is it just like ridiculously compressed? Okay. Yeah, very cool chromatic idea. The glitch is really throwing me off. A very similar keyboard idea in the background again. It's that ping-ponging higher pitch idea. Those chimes will always put a smile on my face though. So good. What mode did we just shift to? Oh, dang, it's over. Okay. I mean, part of my surprise is that those final 2.5 minutes went by in a blur. I mean, the whole song kind of went by in a blur. Definitely did not feel like 10 minutes of music, although the first half was, that was dragging a bit. The pacing picked up right after that, though. But it's a really weird ending to it. Like, it doesn't necessarily point towards it being ended. There's not a lot of finality there. The direction towards the ending doesn't feel, to me, anyways, like that's where they're going for. Um, it's just kind of it's anticlimactic, I think, is where I'm going with that. So yeah, mixed with me not really realizing how much time had passed and the fact that the song didn't feel like it was going towards an ending, it really caught me off guard. Now there's a lot going on in this track, and honestly, I was a little, I'm not gonna say concerned around the 5 minute mark, but I was told to buckle in. In the first 5 minutes, I felt played it exceptionally safe. I was beginning to talk about, before they so rudely interrupted me with some straight up prog metal and semi industrial music, that they reminded me of Big Big Train. That same type of sonic identity where it's definitely proggy, but it also has this warmth and nostalgic element to it. I think they borrow a lot from not necessarily Renaissance music compositionally, but they kind of have that timelessness that Renaissance music tends to have as well, in a way that feels like rock music an older generation is likely to enjoy. And that's not to throw shade at anyone older. You know, it's not like once you get older you have to listen to lighter music, but they sort of, when I think of Big Big Train and I think of their audience, I tend to think of people in their 50s and 60s and 70s enjoying it. I think at one time I even described them as rock music your grandmother might like. Um, and that's sort of where the opening 5 minutes of this were feeling as well. It's funky, it's got groove, um, definitely has some proggy elements to it. It has a very modern sound to a lot of it, but it is very safe rock as well. And you know, there was a lot of cool things I was pointing out at the time, but around the 5 minute mark, I was like, okay, this is this is good, but I want something else. And they, man, they delivered. They it's like they heard me, and they're like, bro, we got something else up our sleeve. Here you go. And I mean, they just throw out this prog metal stuff, straight up Dream Theater influence, wearing their inspirations on their sleeve, which they've kind of been doing the whole time, and we'll touch on that in a second. Um, gnarly, biting guitar. The keyboard switches over to this bass guitar replacement that is fat and disgusting. Just this gnarly bass tone taking up so much space at the bottom. Um, and we got all the glitch stuff going on, kind of bringing it into like modern electronica slash industrial music range. Um, and just shredding guitar solo. We've picked up the tempo, and from here on out, it is just a smorgasbord of sounds. We go into some modern, heavier prog rock that kind of remind me of Arch Echo, although I have no idea when Arch Echo started, so I don't know who influenced who there, but the sounds are very similar, and maybe no one influenced anyone regarding that. Regardless, though, they sound similar to me. Especially the keyboard tone. which I think when I hear that specific keyboard tone over heavier rock or lighter metal, I always think of Arch Echo. That was my introduction to that sound. Um, and just rapid fire, like every minute going into a new direction before ultimately taking us back to something adjacent to where we started, bringing back that similar keyboard line that we had in our entirety of our opening 5 minutes. Still having a bit more bite than our opening, though. Our opening was very clearly prog rock, and this was really teetering on the line between rock and metal. Sort of a conglomeration of all of the sounds we heard. If we could not necessarily take all of the disparate parts and layer them, but create something that was an amalgamation of all of those. Like, if you can't necessarily hear the metal element and the rock element and the electronic element and the jazz element, but you can sort of make out that they're all still generally present. You just can't say, you can't point out and say, oh, that guitar is providing the metal aspect, that keyboard's providing the rock aspect, that kind of thing. We get this amalgamation of it all. And that's kind of what the ending reminds me of there. And I thought that was pretty cool. Because honestly, I think that's pretty hard to do. It's really about distilling down sounds to, I don't know, down to bass components and pairing them up that way. What if we took the rhythm of the jazzy component with the sound of the metal guitar and a riff that's kind of rock like, and we put all that together, and you kind of get this combination of all three that's really none of those three components, but you can feel them all in it. It's not usually how I would ever go about creating something in that vein. It's a lot easier just to take the guitar and tell it, you're doing a metal part and someone else is doing a jazz part, and you can kind of feel it all connected that way. But this is like creating something brand new out of all the sounds, and it's infinitely more difficult. And I think it's awesome that they went that direction in the end, whether intentionally or not. It does feel like everything they had done up to that point all at once. And so dynamics are really important for them. They're just always changing things, except for when they're not. We started off the song with this fade in on this bouncing keyboard line. 16th notes. Each note, I think, went to the other side. So we'd have a left and then a right, then a left and a right. Just ping ponging back and forth. Very much treble clef. This stuff was pretty high up there in the range. It was definitely in a point that I would find annoying. And I know this specifically because when they brought it back at the end, it was less annoying, and it was about 3/4 of an octave to a full octave below where we had it at the beginning of the song, and it was nowhere near as aggravating to listen to. And this whole point is subjective, by the way. So, don't point to me and say he said it's true the song has an annoying keyboard line. No, it's kind of like when you hear the same sounds over and over and over and over and over and over and over, and it gets on your nerves, right? And it could be anything. It could be like a little phone thing. It could be a TikTok video that the person next to you has watched for 100 times and you're tired of that same 5 second loop. It could be somebody calling your name 90 times in a row, not giving you a chance to answer them. Any sort of that. But especially, I think it really affects me specifically when it's higher range ideas. Um, and that's where this one sat. And so it was neat coming in. I love the production on it. We're going to touch on that in a second. It was fine for a 30-second loop. Might have even been fine for a full 1 minute loop as our intro and opening section. I don't really know what the structure is on this. It feels more like a rhapsody, but our opening section was 5 minutes, and we might have done a verse chorus thing in there, but it was all very samey, and I didn't really feel any distinct movements. Anyways, but it did not work for 5 minutes. And by the time I still heard it at the 3 minute mark, at the 4 minute mark, moving into the 5 minute mark, I was like, I need something else going on with this keyboard. So that's personal. Everyone's gonna have a different relationship to that. And honestly, production wise, it's kind of pressed down into the mix a bit. It is not hyper present I don't know how I got fixated on it. Definitely a part of the critical listening aspect where I hone in on specific instruments rather than take the whole thing in as one giant work of art. Um, but once I noticed it, it was so hard not to, even though it was technically kind of quiet. There's like a little nagging in the back of the song. I don't know. That might be something that, one of those moments where I hear something a vast majority of people won't. So maybe it's not as big of a problem, but it was a moment of irritation for me in this track. Um, but it's completely overshadowed by everything else, including the production. Which, as I mentioned, it kind of makes sense that this song is produced the way it is, given that the person behind it, or one of the people behind it, is an award winning producer. The way that instruments fade in and fade out and have minor manipulations done to them, the use of panning, of reverb, of delay, all of it, it feels very much at home in electronic music, even pop music that utilizes electronic background instruments. Even the entire glitch section there is very reminiscent of electronic music. The production quality in here is just 11 out of 10. Top marks. Um, Everything is fine tuned and fine mixed. And instruments don't just stick with what they play. I'm sure that when these parts were composed, the composer also had the production elements in mind. When they play this, what are we going to do with the sound? Is it going to fade in? Is it going to fade out? Is it going to go across the channels? Is it going to have reverb on it? Like, all this was probably in mind as it was being written, which I think is pretty cool because that is not how I go about it at all. To me, it is very much like the raw music first, and then maybe I'll tweak things later when I play it back. I'm like, actually, it'd be pretty cool if we had a sweeping sound here, something like that. Um, it is just, I'm so used to static stuff, man. I wrote a lot of orchestral stuff growing up, and it's set. These instruments play like one or two ways, and they're always in the same positions on the stage. And that's just kind of how my brain works when it comes to writing music. It's very raw first and production second. But a lot of this sounds like the production was in mind when it was written. I think you can really hear that when most of the sections in here have heavy production on them. We can even look specifically at the vocal work here. The vocal list has a nice grit to him, definitely fits well within a rock setting, but the production on here did not say rock at all. It said pop star. There's heavy production on it. If you're more used to a rock or metal drier production, because for the most part, rock and metal vocalists still have quite a bit of effects put on their vocals to make sure they sound good, because our idea of good vocals is not raw. But this was quite a bit more produced than that, and I think for some more traditional metal heads, you're going to find this to be a bit overproduced. Um, and there was even a little bit of that roboticness at one moment that people tend to associate with overdoing the auto tuning. This was done very tastefully, I think, but it did present a digitization to the vocals that I found was interesting just because it was paired with a timbre and the rest of the instruments that really screamed rock to me. It was an interesting choice to put such a heavy pop focused production on the vocals when nothing else really got that. But it ended up working, I think. It was an interesting combination of timbres and sounds. I don't know if I would always reach for this, but it was really nice to hear it here and to sort of have a reference point if I ever hear something like that again in the future, because it's so typical for specific styles of music to have specific productions, especially on vocals. It becomes rarer as time goes on to hear a different type of vocal. We actually just got done talking about this in uh, I don't know. It was the Ved Buens something. Oh, yeah, the track we just listened to. Jeez. Bed Buenzende, Coiled in Wings, black metal with clean vocals. That's not bad, and it sounded pretty good. It's just something nobody really does, and it's a sound I've never heard before. And same thing that happened here. I just don't really ever hear that combination, so that was really neat. The final thing I want to touch on, I think, is just general melody writing. The opening melodies that we heard, the well, all of the vocal melodies we got, the entire extended guitar solo section from like minute 3 to 4 or something. Anytime that there was a lead melody, it just sounded good. The melody writing in here is superb. Even if we just look at the general guitar solo there as a microcosm of this writing everywhere, we can see a patient exploration of multifaceted emotions, moving through a lot of different moments and ideas, different rhythms, changing up the pacing and flow, before ultimately getting into a nice little, what was that, like an 8-beat shred that we had that transitioned us to a brand new idea, moving entire octave down and exploring something a bit slower and moodier for a while before jumping back up and finishing the solo back in that same brighter range we started with. Everything in it feels perfectly paced. Everything is designed to showcase various aspects of the composition style and the performer, even. The shred was a nice foreshadow of what we would get later in the prog metal section, but it also functioned as a way to show off a little bit here as as the guitarist had just shown off that they could do slower, more atmospheric, and emotional guitar playing. There's also a ton of work put into the guitar performance to really make the guitar speak, to make it sing, to give it these beautiful inflections, and a lot of dynamic work in rising and fallingness of phrases. Volume wise, bringing notes into the peak, sitting up here for a while and fading out at the end of a phrase. Everything was just crafted in a way that felt really good to listen to. The guitar itself felt like it was breathing most times, and I relate it more to a jazz solo or a classical lead solo line, more so than a rock solo, which tends to be at one level all the time. It's just the phrasing on all of it was beautiful, and that was paired with really good composition as well. So it all comes together. The composition is solid, the performance of the composition is solid. And, just extrapolate that out to everything in this track. There are very few sections in here that I feel are erroneous, needlessly added, or played without passion in a way that allows every piece of the song to feel human. Everything in here, well, except for the metal industrial section with the poppy vocal production, was very not human in a lot of ways, but it acted as a really nice counterpoint to this more evocative style of playing that we got in our opening 5 minutes too. So, as usual, strong elements of pacing and contrast, which I talked about all the way at the beginning of this analysis. Um, if I had a second listen on this, I probably could come up with a lot more to talk about. This is incredibly deep, but I think I got the main points here that I think the band does exceptionally well and that I really wanted to bring up. So I'm going to hit the lyrics real quick and then we're going to wrap this one up. So on the surface, this track seems to be about somebody who is in war. Went into war rather young as well, says, I'm just a stranger, I walk in the black light, boy to a soldier, I'm fighting the good fight. Says, but I don't want to know about the danger. Later on, he says he was just a farm boy, but when he'll be a killer, it'll make him a real man. I just want to go through the changes. So it's possible, if we take this at face value, that he was seduced by the military ads, possibly. See, the interesting thing is This is a UK songwriter and producer. The album is called The Philadelphia Experiment, and it features the American flag on it. It's not the full flag, it's in like a specific shape. I'm not sure what the shape represents. It's an asterisk as far as I can see. Um, and it's spray painted on, it's like the paint's dripping, but the idea though is that I'm not sure what this is supposed to represent. I know in America, our military complex is very big on advertisement and recruitment. And it could be that he was seduced by the values of the military. If he went there and killed someone, he'd be a real man. So he went young, signed up young. He said he was just a boy. He went from a boy to a soldier, skipping everything in between. Um, but interestingly, just past this idea, I want to go through the changes. He says, I can't breathe. Or is it all in my mind? The faces are changing, misplaced in time, and I won't dream. I will be the headlines. Your features are fading too late this time. And there's elements of lost time, there's elements of forgetting, but there's also a goal in mind. I'm not going to dream to do good. I'm going to be a headline. I'm going to win this. And we see much later on, he says that he wants a hero's ending. He wants to be remembered as great. But throughout this, he questions life. He loses touch with the people around him. He forgets their faces. But that's about where I lose the thread. The final few stanzas, I don't know how to tie into this whole concept right here. And honestly, it could be that this is all surface level read, anyways. There could be something deeper below this, and this is all a metaphor. Maybe this person is not literally at war, but was thrust into life a little too early, forced to mature and do adult stuff as a child. Maybe not necessarily signed up to be in a war, but forced to become an adult. No different than if they were thrown into war as a teenager. So I'm not entirely sure how to read this, but given my confusion in the last final lines, I do think that there is a bit more depth to it. But unfortunately, I'm a music dude, not a lyrics dude. So that's as far as that analysis is going to go. As far as some of the themes, there is the concept of war and combat and victory, which I do think we hear some of in here. While everything at the beginning, technically, which is where he's talking about being a boy to a soldier, is a bit light-hearted, we do eventually get to a point in the song when we experience heavier ideas. We get the metal, we get the industrial, we get the glitch. And all of these could be about the changes. What war does to somebody, how it changes them. Because when we get back to the end of the track, and it's kind of like the beginning, but not. Kind of like how people are sent back. They're kind of the people we remember. They're also kind of not. Those are my thoughts on Black Light Machine from Frost Star. Let me know what y'all thought of this one, if you enjoyed it, if there's anything that stood out to you, anything you'd like to correct me on, or agree with me on, or give me your own perspective on. Put that stuff down in the comment section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you to this menu. You can find links to my menu, to my music, links to the Discord server, links to ways to support the channel, and so much more. I'm thrown off of my usual loop. I'm not on autopilot. I have to think about what I'm saying now, and I don't know what to say. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. We have one more day this week. We're going to be checking out two more special selections. As I stated at the beginning of the week, I'm trying to get through them. I need to get some information from them that I can only get once we're kind of caught up a little more. So until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.